Hello, grade 5, and welcome to session 2 of our lesson, which is characteristics of quadrilaterals. The quadrilaterals we are going to talk about are the square, the rectangle, the rhombus, and the parallelogram. Let's start with the characteristics of a square. We took before that a square has 4 equal sides. They are equal in length. The square has 4 right angles. Now let's talk about the diagonals of the square. Look at the diagonals of the square. They have 2 dashes. It means AO is equal to OD. O is the midpoint of AD, and OB is equal to OC. O is the midpoint of BC. This indicates that AD and BC are equal and they bisect each other. We took these properties before. So the diagonals of a square are equal. AD is equal to BC, and as you can see from the figure, the diagonals are perpendicular and they bisect each other at the same midpoint, which is O. Now let's talk about the characteristics of a rectangle. The rectangle has also 4 right angles. The opposite sides of a rectangle are equal. Now let's talk about the diagonals of the rectangle. What can you say about the diagonals? OB is equal to OD. OA is equal to OC. AC is equal to BD. They are equal and bisect each other. They intersect at the same midpoint, which is O. So the diagonals of the rectangle are equal. AC is equal to BD. And the diagonals bisect each other. Bisect means they intersect at the same midpoint, which is O. Now let's talk about the characteristics of the rhombus. Look at the figure. The rhombus has 4 equal sides. AB is equal to BC is equal to CD is equal to DA. Now let's look at the diagonals. What can you say about the diagonals of the rhombus? EA is equal to EC. EB is equal to ED, but they are not equal in measure. So the diagonals are bisecting each other. They intersect at the same midpoint, which is E. Okay? And if you look again, you are going to notice that the diagonals of the rhombus are perpendicular to each other. AC is perpendicular to BD. Finally, let's talk about the properties of the parallelogram. Look at the parallelogram. We are going to notice that the opposite sides of the parallelogram are equal. Now, let's take a look on the diagonals of the parallelogram. What can you notice? We notice that OD is equal to OE. O is the midpoint of DE. And OL is equal to OK. O is the midpoint of LK. Then O is a common midpoint between the two diagonals. Then we can say that the diagonals of the parallelogram bisect each other. Why? Because they intersect at the same midpoint, which is O. Now let's wrap up. Our lesson is about the characteristics of the quadrilaterals. We said that the quadrilaterals are the shape that they have 4 sides. The quadrilaterals that we are working with are the square, the rectangle, the rhombus, and the parallelogram. We are discussing here the properties of their diagonals. Now, look at these properties. What do you notice? We notice that the common property among the four quadrilaterals that their diagonals bisect each other. The diagonals of a square bisect each other. The diagonals of a rectangle bisect each other. The diagonals of a rhombus bisect each other, and the diagonals of a parallelogram also bisect each other. So these quadrilaterals have diagonals that they bisect each other. They intersect at the same midpoint. Now let's look at the square. What can you say about the diagonals of a square? We said that the diagonals of a square are equal, similar to the diagonals of a rectangle. They are equal. Now let's look again to the diagonals of a square. They are perpendicular, similar to the diagonals of the rhombus. They are perpendicular. The square has more properties. A square has diagonals that they are equal, perpendicular, and bisect each other. The rectangle has equal diagonals and bisect each other. The rhombus has diagonals, perpendicular, and bisect each other's, while the parallelogram, it has only diagonals that bisect each other. By this, we finished our session. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.